Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-day Malaysia visit has marked a strategic leap in India-Malaysia ties, blending diplomacy, technology, security and economic cooperation into a future-ready partnership. A newly released US government map has surprised South Asia, showing Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Aksai Chin as part of India, triggering major geopolitical ripples. The United States has dropped another stunning claim that China secretly carried out a nuclear test just days after the deadly Galwan Valley clash with India in 2020. Poland has uncovered a bizarre but dangerous smuggling operation using weather balloons from Belarus, a scheme authorities now link to hybrid warfare, which is funding Russia's war in Ukraine. But the biggest news of the day: Prime Minister Narendra Modi's latest diplomatic push across Malaysia and Seychelles is turning India's Mahasagar vision into concrete strategic partnerships across the Indian Ocean region. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays and stories that matter. Coming up in this edition of Namaste World. In a vivid illustration of India's pursuit for its Mahasagar vision, mutual and holistic advancement for security and growth across regions, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's engagements over the last 5 days spotlight deepened ties with Indian Ocean region neighbors. On February 7th and 8th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Malaysia, his first overseas trip in 2026, meeting counterpart Anwar Ibrahim. They signed 11 agreements, elevating their comprehensive strategic partnership with focus on semiconductors, AI, digital payments, defense cooperation, and co-production and enhancement of maritime security to counter regional threats. Concurrently, Seychelles President Dr. Patrick Hermione is on a state visit to India and held talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Today at Hyderabad House of New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi and President Hermione discussed blue economy, security, defense cooperation, tourism, health and climate resilience, marking 50 years of diplomatic relations. Over a dozen agreements have been announced during the first state visit of President Hermione after his elections. India announced a $175 million economic package and welcomed Seychelles as a full-time Colombo Security Conclave member and hailed defense and maritime pillars. Hermione invited Prime Minister Modi as guest of honor for Seychelles' 50th Independence Day. These interactions underscore India's commitment to collaborative growth, turning oceanic visions and tangible partnerships on a stable, prosperous Indian Ocean region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-day visit to Malaysia has delivered a decisive boost to India-Malaysia relations, transforming the partnership into a more strategic, technology-driven and security-focused alliance. From fintech linkages and semiconductor cooperation to defense ties and people-to-people exchanges, the visit produced a wide range of concrete outcomes that signal a deeper Indian engagement with Southeast Asia and stronger Indo-Pacific alignment with Kuala Lumpur. Here is a report by Farhan Khan.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-day visit to Malaysia has delivered a major diplomatic and strategic boost to India-Malaysia relations, pushing the partnership into a stronger and more future-focused phase. Modi was given a ceremonial welcome by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim in Putrajaya, followed by extensive talks at both restricted and delegation levels. The leaders agreed to further deepen the comprehensive strategic partnership that was established in 2024, reaffirming the historical bonds and strong people-to-people links between the two countries. The discussions covered almost every key sector of cooperation, from trade and investment to defense, maritime security, clean energy, infrastructure, agriculture, health, education, and tourism. Importantly, both sides also focused on emerging technologies such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence, signaling a clear shift towards high-tech strategic collaboration. One of the standout developments was the growing digital partnership. The leaders welcomed closer fintech cooperation, particularly the linkage between India's UPI system and Malaysia's PayNet platform, which will make cross-border payments smoother and faster. Modi also emphasized strengthening youth connections through university and parliamentary exchanges. Academic partnerships between institutions like Nalanda University and University Malaya, as well as IIT Madras and Malaysia's Advanced Semiconductor Academy, were highlighted as key pillars of future cooperation. Another major announcement was the establishment of India's first Consulate General in Malaysia, a move expected to significantly boost commercial ties and support the large Indian origin community in the country. On the global stage, both leaders exchanged views on Indo-Pacific security, India-ASEAN cooperation, and the need for reforms in global governance institutions. Modi called for faster progress on the ASEAN-India Trade Agreement review, while congratulating Malaysia for its successful ASEAN chairmanship in 2025. In turn, Anwar Ibrahim expressed support for India's BRICS presidency in 2026. Security cooperation also featured prominently, with Modi thanking Malaysia for condemning recent terror attacks in India and stressing the need for closer counter-terrorism coordination. The visit produced an impressive list of concrete outcomes. Several agreements were signed covering digital payments, semiconductor cooperation, health and medicine, disaster management, vocational training, anti-corruption efforts, security cooperation, UN peacekeeping, and social security protection for Indian workers in Malaysia. Cultural ties were strengthened through an audiovisual co-production agreement and the launch of a dedicated Tiruvallur Center at University Malaya, along with new scholarships for Malaysian students. Malaysia also formally completed its accession to the International Big Cat Alliance, an Indian-led conservation initiative. In addition, the 10th India-Malaysia CEO Forum brought together business leaders from both sides, reinforcing the economic dimension of the partnership. Modi's Malaysia visit was not just symbolic, it delivered tangible strategic, economic, and technological gains. From fintech to semiconductors, from security to education, the trip firmly positioned India and Malaysia as long-term partners in a rapidly shifting Indo-Pacific landscape. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
What began as a routine trade deal announcement between India and the United States has unexpectedly turned into a diplomatic earthquake. Hidden inside official US document was a new map of India, one that clearly included Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Aksai Chin within Indian territory with no disclaimer or ambiguity. The move has raised sharp question about whether Washington is quietly shifting its stance, sending a pointing message to Pakistan and China and signaling a deeper strategic tilt towards New Delhi. Here is a report by Rudrashish Kanjilal.
A trade deal announcement, a routine document release, and suddenly a map shakes South Asia. The Trump administration has released an official map of India that shows Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Aksai Chin as part of India. No disclaimers, no dotted lines, no ambiguity. So, was Washington sending a message loudly and deliberately? As India and the United States unveiled the framework for an interim trade agreement, attention quickly shifted from tariffs to territory. Buried in documents released by the US Trade Representative's Office was a map of India, and this time it was different. The map showed the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, including Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, firmly within India's borders. It also showed Aksai Chin, claimed by China as Indian territory. For New Delhi, this isn't about validation. India has always maintained that Kashmir is an inalienable part of the country, but diplomatically, the signal is unmistakable. For years, official US maps carefully walked a tightrope, marking POK separately, often aligning with Pakistan's sensitivities. That line has now vanished. The latest map thumbs its nose at Pakistan's claims and marks a clear departure from Washington's earlier cartography. This comes at a moment when India-US ties are being reset under a mercurial Donald Trump after months of tension. Only weeks ago, Trump slapped India with punitive 50% tariffs, the highest imposed on any US ally. Under the interim trade deal, those tariffs have now been slashed to 18%, the lowest among Asian nations. Trade relief on paper, territorial symbolism on the map. But there's another layer to the story, and it points straight at Islamabad. Under Trump, Washington has flirted with rehyphenating India and Pakistan, undoing years of policy that treated the two separately. At the time, Pakistani diplomacy has gone into overdrive. Over the last 6 months, Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir has visited the United States 3 times. He has met Donald Trump twice, including a highly publicized private lunch. Notably, the meeting involved no Pakistani civilian leadership, a first in US-Pakistan history. And yet, despite all the optics, this map lands as a strategic gut punch to Pakistan. China too cannot ignore the message. The map marks Aksai Chin, a region seized by China in 1962 as part of India. Beijing has long rejected India's claims, and New Delhi has consistently objected to how global agencies depict its borders. So, is this a shift in US policy or just a bureaucratic slip? The question remains open. Was this a subtle realignment toward India, a tactical gesture to placate New Delhi after a year of friction with Trump, or simply an unnoticed change that slipped through the system? What is clear is this: maps are never just maps, they are political documents, and this one gives India significant diplomatic bragging rights, reinforcing its claims on two of its most sensitive territorial fronts. For Pakistan, it's an uncomfortable signal. For China, a quiet provocation. And for India, a reminder that sometimes the loudest statements are made without a single word spoken. A trade deal may come and go, tariffs may rise and fall, but lines drawn on a map, they tend to last much longer. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
In a revelation that could reshape how Galwan Valley crisis is viewed, US official now alleged that China conducted a covert nuclear explosive test barely a week after the deadly India-China border clash in June 2020. Using a technique designed to evade international detection, the alleged test raises serious questions about Beijing's nuclear ambitions and whether one of the most violent standoff in decades coincided with a hidden escalation beneath the surface. Here is a report by Harsh Mishra.
In June 2020, as Indian and Chinese troops were locked in a deadly confrontation in the Galwan Valley, another development may have been quietly unfolding beneath the surface. The United States now alleges that China conducted a covert nuclear explosive test on June 22, 2020, just days after the brutal June 15th clash at the line of actual control. The claim has been made by US Under-Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, Thomas DiNanno, at the United Nations Disarmament Conference in Geneva. The timing has raised serious questions, especially from an Indian perspective. According to DiNanno, the US government is aware that China carried out nuclear explosive tests, including preparing tests with designated yields in the hundreds of tons. He specifically pointed to what he described as a yield-producing test on June 22, 2020. The technique allegedly used is known as decoupling. This involves detonating explosives inside large underground cavities to muffle seismic signals and reduce the chances of international detection. DiNanno argued that this allowed China to obscure its activities even as the world was grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. If true, the method would raise concerns about compliance with global nuclear test ban commitments. The alleged test took place exactly 1 week after the June 15, 2020 Galwan Valley clash. At least 20 Indian soldiers were killed in hand-to-hand combat. China acknowledged casualties but did not disclose a full figure. It was the deadliest confrontation between the two countries in decades. While the US officials did not explicitly link the alleged nuclear test to the border violence, the overlap in timing cannot be ignored from India's standpoint. The Galwan clashes were part of broader 2020 and 2021 tensions across the line of actual control, marked by aggressive troop deployments and infrastructure buildups on both sides. If the allegation is accurate, it suggests that during one of the most sensitive military standoffs in recent years, Beijing may also have been advancing its nuclear capabilities. The allegation surfaced as the New START treaty between the United States and Russia expired on February 5, 2026. While Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed extending the treaty for 1 year, US President Donald Trump rejected the proposal, saying he wanted a new disarmament agreement. DiNanno defended the US decision not to extend New START. He said the treaty signed in 2010 no longer reflects the realities of 2026. According to him, one nuclear power is expanding its arsenal at a pace not seen in over half a century, and another continues to develop a wide range of nuclear systems outside the treaty's limits. He was referring to China and Russia. He also pointed out that while almost all deployed US nuclear forces were subject to New START, only a fraction of Russia's stockpile was covered and no Chinese nuclear weapons were included at all. He stated that the United States can now take steps to strengthen deterrence for the American people and its allies. The allegation of a covert Chinese nuclear test during the week of the Galwan clashes adds a new dimension to an already tense chapter in India-China relations. It also comes at a time when global arms control frameworks are weakening and the last major US-Russia nuclear treaty has lapsed. If proven, the claim could have serious implications not just for regional stability in Asia but for the future of global nuclear deterrence.
In a case that sounds almost unbelievable, Polish authorities have charged 5 men for smuggling thousands of cigarette packs across the Belarus border using GPS-tracked weather balloons. But this is no ordinary tax crime. Prosecutors say the operation forms part of a wider hybrid warfare strategy tied to Belarus and Russia, raising fears that these low-tech aerial routes could soon be used for far more dangerous purposes in the Ukraine conflict. Here is a report by Debangana Datta.
Poland has charged 5 men with an unusual crime: smuggling cigarettes from Belarus using weather balloons. But prosecutors say this isn't just about lost tax revenue. It's hybrid warfare that funds Russia's war in Ukraine. The 5 suspects, 2 Polish citizens, 2 Ukrainians, and 1 Belarusian, allegedly operated a criminal gang that used GPS-tracked balloons to float at least 48,000 packs of cigarettes across the border. The scheme cost Poland's treasury about 474,000 euros in lost taxes. Since 2024, smugglers have increasingly turned to balloons as Poland fortified its border amid a migration and security crisis. Traditional smuggling routes by road, rail and land have been shut down, forcing criminal networks to innovate. But Polish authorities view this as more than tax evasion. Prosecutors say the smuggling operation directly supports Belarus, Russia's closest ally, providing income that enables Minsk to participate in Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. Among the smuggled cigarettes were brands produced by Grodno tobacco factory Niemen, a Belarusian state-controlled enterprise. Poland and Lithuania have reported hundreds of balloon incursions since late 2025. Lithuania declared a statewide emergency in December after 600 balloons entered its airspace, forcing repeated airport closures. NATO officials fear these low-tech, hard-to-track objects are being used to test air defenses, response times, and coordination. Classic hybrid warfare tactics. Experts warn the threat could escalate. While today's balloons carry cigarettes, there's concern they would eventually carry explosives or weapons. Lithuania's border commander says it's only a question of time before balloons are weaponized. All 5 suspects face up to 12 years in prison if convicted. They have been placed in pre-trial detention and have reportedly admitted to the crimes. With Debangana Datta, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here's a quick look at the top stories making waves around the world. In Japan, Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's LDP-led coalition secured a 2/3 majority in the lower house of parliament, strengthening her mandate just months after becoming Japan's first female Prime Minister. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Prime Minister Takaichi on her landslide election victory, reaffirming the India-Japan special strategic and global partnership as key to global peace and stability. In Latin America, Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Pablo Guaidó has been released after spending more than 8 months in prison. Guaidó is one of the closest allies of opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado. His release comes amid growing pressure on acting President Delcy Rodriguez's government to free political prisoners. In Europe, centre-left socialist António José Seguro won Portugal's presidential runoff in a landslide, securing around 66% of the vote to defeat far-right rival André Ventura. Despite storms and minor voting delays, turnout held steady, with Seguro now set for a 5-year term in the largely ceremonial but influential role. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Namaste World. From breakthrough in technology and business to political developments and natural disasters. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates, key developments and more from New Delhi to New York. See you again tomorrow, same time, right here on Namaste World.